Welcome to Season 9, Episode 6 of the Ubuntu Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be discussing breaking the internet, and we'll also have some command line love and loads of your feedback. I'm Alan, and joining me this week is Mark.
Hello.
Hello. Laura.
Hello.
And Martin.
Hola.
Hello. Mark, what have you been up to since last time?
I went to Moodle Moot.
Ooh, what's Moodle Moot?
Moodle Moot is the national conference. Well, there's several of them all over the world. But I went to the UK and Ireland one, which is the national conference for Moodle, which is the open source learning platform that I work with.
And where was that and what happened?
It was in London, the Albert Embankment, a hotel which was under construction while we were there, much like the software.
How many times was that joke cracked while you were there?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, so we had a hack day on the first day where we all the developers got together and chatted about stuff and hacked on some ideas. And then we had a couple of days of presentations about all sorts, from administering, developing, teaching, building courses online, MOOCs, and all kinds of related learning technology stuff.
Wow, this is bigger than it's quite a long conference. It's a bigger thing than I expected.
I mean, I think that there were about 300 people there from all over the UK and Ireland, and a few from further afield than that, in fact.
And what was the number one thing that you learned or came away with after attending?
Oh, goodness. Well, I presented about automated testing. So I spoke to lots of people about that. And I think a lot of people are rightfully scared of doing it because Moodle is a very big system with lots of automated tests, and getting them all to run is a scary job. So I now kind of appreciate that, I'm not alone in struggling with it sometimes.
Awesome. Cool. Martin, what have you been up to?
Well, a couple of weekends ago, I was helping the Debian team follow up on the SHA-1 removal.
The what?
So in recent versions of apt, SHA-1 is no longer a sufficient hashing algorithm. So you have to use SHA-256 or SHA-512. And this had some fallout for people who maintain their own apt repositories and are not using current standards. So there's this concept of fully broken repositories and half-broken repositories. And because of the work I've done,
are there some non-broken repositories as well?
There are a few now.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I was pleased to say that the one that was non-broken at the outset was SyncThings apt repository. That was straight in at number one, the first one that was discovered to be fully working
nice.
with all the new source. Embarrassingly, everything that Google published was busted. So some of their stuff is still broken. So I've been working with that team, collecting up repositories and contacting repository maintainers to get them to update what they're doing. Because with 1604 around the corner, there is some software that you won't be able to install on 1604 because the repository simply won't be allowed. And that was the case with Google Chrome, which has been changed from broken to half broken. So it works at least. But the rest of the Google repositories are currently in a fully broken state. So, yeah, that was a fun evening chasing that round. And there's a lot more people involved in that effort now. And we'll have a link to that wiki page in Debian where you can find out which repositories are known about and have been contacted. And if there's one there that hasn't been contacted, it'd be really great if people could help find the maintainers of these repositories and get in touch.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Let's get on with it.
Now, in this discussion segment, we're going to talk about breaking the internet.
Isn't
Not in the Kim Kardashian way.
good. I'm glad you clarified that.
Well, I don't know. There's some
was the
dodgy
email that
photos of
first
Popey
came
going
to
around.
mind. Yes.
No, well, what happened in this instance of the internet being broken, it was a much more technical breakage than previous social media breakages. In this case, a couple of JavaScript developers, one by the name of Aza and another a company called Kik, had a disagreement over the name of a package in a software repository. Basically, they both wanted to have a package called Kik, K-I-K. They couldn't resolve it between them, so they approached the people who are the bosses of the repository to get a resolution, and they decided that if there's a package called Kik, it should be produced by a person called Kik or a company called Kik.
So what are these two? Are these like essential parts of the internet? These things that the thing that Aza made called Kik and the thing that Kik made called Kik, are these vital components that would break the internet if they disappeared?
No, it's a bit more complicated than that.
No. I mean, I know there's a knock-on that you'll get to later, but what is Kik? I mean, what are they?
Kik is a messenger app,
Yes,
I think.
and it's
I'd never heard of it.
and it's
before.
also another small piece of software which is produced by Aza.
Right.
What Kik? Interestingly, what Kik does is completely inconsequential to this whole shenanigans.
I thought so, but I just wondered why it is that an individual developer who maintains a thing that has a name, you know, I can understand when someone else has a trademark and they have branding and they want to protect their product and all that kind of stuff. I can understand those kind of things, and I can understand why people don't like that. Fair enough. I just wondered what they did.
No, I think.
Sorry,
Laura.
Aza's Kik package already existed, but Kik Messenger wanted to be able to release a package. And to be honest, I think they should have just called it Kik Messenger and it would have been a lot easier. But they got their lawyers involved who apparently quite harshly put the suggestion of changing the name.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether they actually got their lawyers involved.
The original story I read was that the lawyers were involved, and they sent a message which apparently later on they said was more harshly worded than it was intended.
Okay. Right. So
that Aza took umbrage.
Yes. So basically, what happened here was Kik approached the NPM people for a resolution, which they have a name conflict resolution process, which is handy.
Can I just put my hand up again? Sorry. NPM is like apt-get for Node.
JavaScript packages.
For JavaScript, right. Okay.
So if you have a JavaScript library or a tool which runs on Node.js, then you tend to distribute it via NPM because having language-specific software repositories is the new hotness.
Apparently so. So you can do npm install Kik and you would get Aza's thing, right?
Originally, yes, you would.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So there was a mess, and then the npm maintainer people, whoever they are,
yes, they said that according to their policy, they aim to make it so that when someone installs a piece of software, they get what they would expect, and they thought that people would expect that a package called Kik comes from the people called Kik. So they said to Aza, sorry, but we're going to give this name to Kik. So in that, basically what would then happen was that the next time Kik did a release, anyone who installed Kik after that would get the new version, well, the different software, whereas anyone who was previously relying on Aza's Kik would keep getting that version. However, what actually happened was Aza said, nope, this isn't fair, and unpublished all of his packages, which was Kik and about 200 other pieces of software, all in NPM.
So he's quite a prolific developer and feels that he had been unfairly treated by the NPM people.
Yes.
And as a result, threw his toys out of the pram and yanked all his software from NPM, right?
Yes. And the internet breaking effect this had was one of these packages was called LeftPad, which is
when you say
used
package, you mean like 5 lines of code?
I think they call it a micro framework.
Micro framework. Okay.
Oh, my.
So it was essentially a function which added padding to the left of a string to make it.
But the fact is, it was a piece of code that was in a repository that had a particular name that other people depend on, right?
That other people depended on. A lot of other people depended on, and a lot of people depended on the things that it depended on. And so when this was pulled out of NPM, basically without warning, suddenly lots and lots of JavaScript projects couldn't be built anymore, and thus the internet was broken. Right.
And so there's a few issues here. One is obviously the trademark issue, the fact that the NPM decision was to err on the side of the people who own the trademark and not the guy who, arguably was squatting the name, right?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Well, was he squatting the name, or was he just there first with a piece of software?
Right.
Yeah. I see what you mean. That's why he did have a piece of software using the name Kick. Yes, it wasn't just like he registered an empty repository.
It seems
and it wasn't a messenger
to have a namespace and then change the piece of software that occupies that namespace.
Yeah.
Right.
Because how do you communicate that? I mean, that seems crazy to me.
Yeah, and we've already got plenty of examples of that in other realms, like for example, in Debian, if you apt-get install Chromium, you get a game.
You get a brilliant shooting game.
Yeah.
No, not anymore. You don't. That's unfortunately not the case anymore. That's now Chromium BSU.
Oh, okay. Well, so we've done it in Debian as well then.
So they have undone it. Right. I guess there was enough confusion that someone thought, let's just rename.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I think NPM's point of view is that it comes down to avoiding confusion.
Right. But so loads of people had their automated like Jenkins stuff and their build scripts and all their stuff in the cloud, building all their tools, and they all depend on some of these tiny micro frameworks or whatever we're calling them that do pivotal things that are required that you could actually write yourself, but that you didn't. Someone else wrote, and you're expecting that third party is curating that in a way that won't break your stuff.
Yes, and you're expecting that if you're fetching something from a repository, that someone can't do something that makes that thing go away.
Well, I can expect there is a reasonable expectation that things may go away sometimes. Like, for example, Ubuntu got asked by OwnCloud to remove OwnCloud from the repository because it's old and crusty and insecure. Now, there's a significant difference here in that there's not a whole bunch of packages that depend on OwnCloud. It would be very different if someone asked us to remove libc from the archive, or something really fundamental like bash, for example. If we were told remove bash from the archive, that would break a ton of stuff, or sh or dash or any of those would break a ton of stuff. We haven't had this in Ubuntu, but I can see how this will be frustrating for users. Yeah.
Yeah. And also no one asked anyone to remove left pad. This is
the key.
Right.
Yeah. It was a
in fact, no one asked anyone to remove Kick. They just said that from now on, future, the Kick would have still been there for the people who were using it. They weren't going to unpublish that. They were just going to make it so that from then on, anyone installing Kick would get a different piece of software. And left pad wasn't even considered at this point, because it just happened to be published by the same person.
Developer.
In Debian and maintainer, in Debian and Ubuntu, the maintainer of a package doesn't have the authority to remove packages from the archive arbitrarily. There is governance in place to control that.
No, but you could break them. You could upload a new version of the package which was empty.
You'd struggle. I mean, for me, for example, as a maintainer, I push my changes into Debian's Git repositories, and then I contact the Debian developer and sponsor and say, can you look at these changes? And they will sign off on those and then upload them to the archive on my behalf. So there is peer review and checks and balances in place to prevent me from putting something deliberately busted into the Debian archive and subsequently into the Ubuntu archive.
Someone else could. Someone who is a core dev could do that, surely.
Yeah. I imagine they could, but I think once you've done that Debian developer status, you're not going to jeopardize it by doing something asinine like that.
Right. And so Aza's comment that he says NPM is someone's private land where corporate is more powerful than the people and it's not truly free. He has an argument that the NPM is not. It's not. It's not a community maintained corpus of code, which you could argue Debian is a community maintained body of work that everyone works to strive to make better. And someone comes along and tries to like mess up your toys, you try and work around that problem. And that we've seen that with things like, when Mozilla came along and said you can't have Firefox, well, we'll work around that. We'll just rename the thing and call it Iceweasel. And now we're back to calling it Firefox now. So I think Aza has a point. I think he was somewhat overzealous by yanking all his stuff because I'm sure he knew exactly the impact of what he did. And to be fair, none of us would be talking about this if he hadn't yanked leftpad. If he'd only yanked Kick from NPM, nobody would have noticed, and this would have gone under the radar, and nobody would have discussed about the flaws in NPM. So he actually arguably did the right thing by throwing his toys out the pram and yanking everything, because now everyone's talking about it and everyone says, right, we need to fix this thing. Whether it's namespacing or a better governance model or whatever it is, we need to fix this thing.
Yeah, because one of the points that came up with some friends was what you said earlier about just being able to sabotage packages. Because if there's not, even if you don't have permission to actually delete a repository, you could put something dodgy in a repository where there isn't that kind of governance that you were talking about on Debian.
Right, but even then, and if Aza had removed all that stuff and not tweeted about it, and not written a Medium blog post about it, about how this was a terrible situation and he's removing it as a reaction to what NPM had done with Kick, right? Even if he just removed everything and then not tweeted about it and not blogged about it, what would have happened? Would NPM have said, well, has something gone wrong here? Has someone hacked Aza's account and has someone redacted this stuff out of NPM? Should we then put it back? Either way, whether he did it intentionally or not, they still need to have those checks and balances, which they clearly don't have.
Oh, yeah. And that was the point, was that it is possible to do this, and by removing the stuff, it is shown that you can do this without any kind of oversight,
right.
I guess.
And also someone else, with the mechanism that was in place at the time, anyone else could have then taken the names of any of the packages he'd unpublished and put something else in there with that name, which people would then have been pulling and adding to their projects.
Right.
This has since been resolved. NPM have published a blog post outlining their new policies, which prevent a developer in the future unpublishing a bunch of stuff without warning, and also prevents, in the event that something has been unpublished, someone else just publishing whatever they want in its place, which is good. I mean, it means that they've
right.
learnt from the situations at
right.
least.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. The fact that Aza actually did this publicly helped. So they're making the community corpus better, right? I wasn't arguing against that. I was agreeing with that. And the point was that there are other aspects to it and other repositories have probably got the same flaws.
Mm.
Yeah, the whole upstreams who say don't use distro packages because they're outdated and they're crusty and it's slow to update them. Well, there's a good reason for that. There's checks and balances in place, and if you inherit some of those good things that we have in repositories like Debian and Ubuntu and Fedora and all the others, then maybe you could be good like us. I don't know. So I mean, go on.
I was going to say, what other sort of repositories are there like NPM aside from the distros?
There's one for basically any language these days.
Yeah, Perl has CPAN.
Oh, like Ruby is them as well, yeah.
Yeah, Ruby
Gems.
PyPy with pip for Python.
Maven for Java.
Yeah.
Is there one for COBOL?
PHP.
I wouldn't have thought there was one for COBOL. Someone's going to email in and tell me there's one for COBOL. Punch cards.
A physical library of punch cards.
And how moderated are they all, do you know?
I don't.
No, we don't. And probably it would take someone to throw their toys out. I would imagine something like CPAN is well moderated, given its Perl,
Now you could do this in Python PyPy. If you're the uploader for the Python package, you could remove it.
I wonder if we'll see that change in the near future.
Everyone start rethinking their processes when they see this. So the reason I find this interesting is similar kind of things could happen to us, and I'd be interested to know from our listeners if there's anything that they've seen that they've been using that's been shut down by an evil corporate entity or an evil community maintained project, whatever, that's adversely affected them. I'll be interested to hear about it. If something's been shut down that that you use, let us know about it.
And now it's time for some command line love.
Hit me, Martin.
And you're welcome. And this week our command line love is Glances, which is a curses-based system monitoring tool that is written in Python. And curses is sort of HTOP++. It gives you a single view of everything in one terminal screen, including processes, memory consumption, sensors, network I/O, disk I/O, and you can add plugins for things like your Docker containers, and it'll highlight warnings and critical conditions, and it has plugins for a whole heap of niche things. So if you run some of the clustering software or have specific RAID configurations, it can report on a whole heap of stuff. And it's available in the archive. You can just apt-get install Glances, and then you just run Glances in a terminal, and it's beautiful. You get to see everything that you could want to know about the health of your system in one screen.
This looks lovely. It's like it's
so good.
Top on crack, isn't it? It's really nice.
It really is. It really is great. And what's nice is that although you can install it from the archive, you can also, because it's a Python module, you can also install it with pip, as we were just talking about, installing things using package managers for languages. And if you do it that way, and you know that a particular machine is, for example, has Docker installed on it, you can pull in the necessary requirements to enable the Docker functionality. Or if you're putting it on a storage array, you can pull in the modules to give site to the RAID modules. So you can customize it for each machine and their role, which is really useful.
Sorry, I'm overloaded with information just watching Glances on my laptop while I'm not quite sure where to look now.
That is kind of the first impression that people get when they run it for the first time. So if you've never used Glances before, it's really worth a look. And typically how I use this is I run top or HTOP first, and so long as the system isn't sufficiently loaded, so if it's running fine, I then immediately switch to HTOP, because this is usually the thing you can look at to then decide, are you going to send a fat man running around a field, or are you going to use strace on something? Or it gives you a clue as to what next tool that you're going to use to better diagnose what's going on in the system.
What man running around the field?
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
Fat trace.
Fat trace.
Oh. A command line love from a few shows ago.
It's a callback.
We love getting your feedback, so please send it to us. Even the pointlessly mean stuff makes us laugh. If it's short, tweet us on @Ubuntu Podcast. If it's less short, but please no essays, email us on show@ubuntupodcast.org. If you'd like to discuss some of the things we talk about with other listeners, post on our shiny new subreddit at reddit.com/r/Ubuntu Podcast. Or you can just leave a comment on the relevant show notes on our website, ubuntupodcast.org.
And now it's time for all your lovely feedback. Martin Green emailed us.
I am just mailing with a request, really. You're mostly quite softly spoken people, and I have a hard time hearing what you're saying when walking down the streets on my way to work. Is there a way you could up the levels and normalise it a little bit better? Of all the podcasts I listen to, yours is the most problematic in this regard.
This was in response to episode 3 of this season. For episode 4, we actually modified the post-production of the podcast. Did we do anything specific, Martin?
I think Martin did
We
it.
tweaked the compression that we use on the presenter tracks and how we do the compression on the final mix. So, Martin, if you're listening and you can hear us,
Hooray.
please send us some feedback as to how episode 4 and hopefully this and subsequent episodes sound in terms of volume.
Cool. So, see, we're responsive. And Torrin Doyle emailed us.
Please have Mark your podcast if it's possible. No, I'm only kidding. Sorry.
You're so funny.
Torrance,
He's here all week, ladies and gentlemen.
please have Mark Shuttleworth on a future podcast episode if possible. I'm so sorry, Martin. Yeah, we've had Mark on 2-3 times. We haven't had him on for a while, I think. Probably about a year ago, maybe. I think
Yeah,
actually
more than
it was-
that. We were in person.
That's right. It was actually, I remember it was around about the same time we interviewed you, Martin, about Martin.
Oh, yes, it was.
It was about the week before, I think. I think it was a similar kind of time.
Yes.
So
Good
yes.
interview, actually.
It was season 7, episode 2, the one where everybody finds out is the last time you interviewed
What
Mark
did we find
Shuttleworth.
out?
That was quite-
Everything.
yeah, there's a comment Mark says to me that I remember vividly. So go back and listen to that if you want to.
There was a comment he said to me, which I remember quite vividly as well. Something we wouldn't normally have kept in, but as it was him.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, and it's got
Forgot
a
about
brilliant
that.
video on that show as well.
Excellent. Super.
So Andy Smith at Griffers tweeted us.
Ubuntu Podcast have reached episode 40. Tisk.
What was that all about?
Sorry, no, I didn't read that very well. I think it was with reference to his previous tweet where he was enraged that we hadn't watched The West Wing in a previous episode.
Yes.
And by that point, I think we also commented that we still hadn't watched The West Wing.
I still haven't.
Neither have I.
Oh well.
There's now a podcast about the West Wing.
Isn't it finished? It's not still on.
Yes, it finished years ago. But the guy who played Josh in the West Wing, he and another guy are now doing a watch an episode a week and podcast about it. So they've got quite a lot to go, really. But they're about 3 or 4 weeks in now, apparently. And it's apparently pretty good. I haven't listened to it yet. Anyway, Shannon Odom left us a message on our Facebook page.
I'm volunteering at my son's school for Career Day. I'll be using my son's Canoe computer to show how easy it is to program using Scratch. I thought by using the Canoe it would help the children help keep the children interested, since most kids play Minecraft. Any advice on how to keep it interactive, or do you have any kind of presentation for kids? Just trying to do my part to introduce Linux to the next generation. I replied to Shannon and said, had you considered contacting Code Club? They may have resources that you can make use of. But I'd be interested to know if our listeners have any ideas about this sort of thing.
Alan, you've done Code Club, haven't
I
you?
have, yes, and they do have content. The Code Club stuff is all Creative Commons licensed, and it's all PDFs that you can just grab from the site and print out. At least it was when I did it over a year ago. And it's really, really good for step-by-step taking someone from zero to hero with Scratch. You start off with a really, really basic game in the first lesson, as it were, and you move up to more complicated stuff, and each lesson introduces more complicated programming concepts like loops and ifs and all that kind of stuff. It's really quite good. So if you can get hold of the Code Club stuff, that'd be great. If not, drop us an email and I'll send you a zip file with all the stuff I have, if it's not easily findable on their website.
Richard Ulger emailed us.
You mentioned in episode 4 that your feed was crashing someone's podcatcher. It also crashes Netcaster. I've since switched to AntennaPod, which works fine. I don't
Maybe
know
it's a
why
problem with
that's the case.
Netcaster.
Yeah, let's see if we can break Netcaster next. Oh, we have. Oh, well done us.
Isaac Carter emailed us to confirm what Brian Stanley reported.
Just listen to the episode Master of Unrelated Science. I use a Raspberry Pi as a Tor proxy and have noticed the same issue that one listener wrote in about when attempting to download or update the Ubuntu podcast on my phone's podcast app. I get a 403 error saying the server is refusing to respond to the request. Everything works fine when I switch my phone over to use the regular home Wi-Fi, which every time I choose to use the Raspberry Pi Tor proxy, I get that error. Hope that helps out. And Martin has now fiddled with our CDN a bit, and Isaac Carter then emailed, I'm now able to get updates through my Tor proxy of the Ubuntu podcast. Thanks for fixing that. Cheers.
Yay.
Hooray. So now if you're using Tor, you shouldn't have any more problems.
Awesome. Thanks for fixing that, Martin.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And Stephen Martinez emailed us.
Enjoyed the podcast. Since I'm a nerdy type, I paid careful attention on the part about how to be a hipster. So if I understand correctly, I need to search eBay for a wind-up 78 record player and find the 1927 song Crazy Words, Crazy Tune. I'm sure if I drive around Los Angeles in my old car with the record player in the passenger seat playing Crazy Words, Crazy Tune, I will get plenty of attention. This should get me up to the hipster level. I'll let you know how it goes.
I'm pretty sure you'll fit in just fine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you'll get plenty of attention.
To be honest, if you want advice of how to be a hipster, we're probably not the best people to ask. Although Laura, I believe Laura does have her name on the wall at the Shoreditch Town Hall. Am I correct about that?
That's so passé now. It no longer exists.
Oh, wow.
Oh, right. You were in Shoreditch before it was cool.
Move on, Mark. Move on.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Dalston now.
That's the end of your feedback. And that's all for episode 6. We'll be back next week when we'll have more news, comment, and discussion. Thank you for listening. Send us your feedback.
We love you all.
Well, most of you.
Most of
Even
you.
the mean ones.
Most of the mean ones.
The
ones that make us laugh.
The ones that make us laugh. Wow, that went really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Ta-ra.
Bye.
Bye.